Good evening. Today is Monday, August 26, 2024. The time now is 6 p.m. and I will call to order this regular meeting of the Town of Mead Board of Trustees. In accordance with the town's remote participation and remote meeting policy adopted by the Board of Trustees on March 13th, 2023, by resolution number 21-R-2023, remote participation will be allowed. The meeting link has been provided on the town's website, designated posting place 24 hours prior to this meeting. I'd like to remind everyone present, both in person and virtually, of the town's general guidelines for public comment at open meetings and public hearings. The guidelines are available online and on the entry table. There are 2 public comment opportunities on the agenda for persons in attendance at Town Hall to address the board. The first is limited to items that are on the agenda, and the second public comment opportunity allows any subject, whether it is on the agenda or not. Marisol, roll call, please.
Mayor Whitlow.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Cartwright.
Here.
Trustee Adams.
Here.
Trustee Broadhead. Trustee Harris.
Here.
Trustee Parr.
Here.
Trustee Schranz.
Here.
Mayor Whitlow, today is Monday, August 26, 2024, and you do have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Please join me in a moment of silence for all loved ones lost to suicide and for their family and friends. Thank you very much for your time. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Next is review and approve agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as is?
I'll move to approve the agenda as is. Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please, Marisol.
Trustee Harris.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Cartwright.
Yes.
Trustee Adams.
Yes.
Trustee Schranz.
Yes.
Trustee Parr.
Yes.
Mayor Whitlow.
Yes. Thank you very much. We have an agenda for this evening. Next is our town manager report. Ma'am, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor and trustees. You have my report. I do want to point out a couple of items that are in the packet and on my report. First of all, if you'll recall, a month ago, 2 meetings ago, I presented to you the High Plains Boulevard agreement that we had with Weld County that basically permitted Weld County to build that segment of County Road 9.5, High Plains Boulevard between County Road 32 and 34. That was phase 1 of the agreement. And the second phase is the not more important, but another important segment, which is 34 to 36. And that segment is going to be built by a combination of Weld County throwing in $3 million, the town of Mead, $1 million, and the developers, $2 million. So that's the second of the agreements that we talked about then. I just want you to know that that's in consent. And one of the developers, Dean Brown, is here in case any questions come up over that. Also concerning High Plains Boulevard, this Wednesday at 5 p.m. at Public Works, the Weld County is having a public meeting on that. So, and Erica will be attending that meeting, and all of you are invited as well, if you're interested in that. Just a few other things. Doug's Diner should be opening in the next week. They got their building permit. So we're looking forward to that. We have had a bunch of complaints about a number of things, including traffic. As you all know, the traffic on I-25 is causing the diversion on County Road 7. We also had graffiti over in Founders, and we also have had many complaints on the weeds in Rangeview, which they finally annihilated those weeds. They must have come in with quite a bit of equipment, but if you drive by there, it looks way better. We also had complaints of speeding on 7th. This is neighbors complaining near the school. So we're just trying to step up our police activity the best we can over there. And then finally, I just wanted to say Mary, our town clerk, will be back tomorrow for the meet and greet. She's been out of town, but she's coming home tomorrow, so we'll see her then. And that's all I have.
Questions, comments for Helen? None. Thanks, Helen. All right, we'll move on to our informational item tonight's compensation study results for 2024. I will turn the microphone over to Helen to introduce this item.
Thank you, Mayor. We have zooming in with us tonight, Lori Graves of Graves Consulting. As you know, we hire her every year to assess our salaries and make sure we're in line. And so we've been working with her, and she is going to present to us live from Tulsa, Oklahoma, her recommendations.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And I appreciate each of you allowing me some time in your meeting this evening. I will try to be cautious with your time, as I'm sure you have a lot of things to cover. I do have just a short presentation that I'm going to share with you, because I not only want to share the results of the study that we do on an annual basis, but I always like to kind of come back in and do a brief overview of the process. Because even though it is something that we do all the time, it's certainly not something that you look at every day. And so we'll be going through that. Let me share my screen and make sure that's working. Okay. Hopefully you are able to see the presentation.
We are. Thank you, Lori.
Okay, awesome. So just a little bit about Graves Consulting by way of reminder. We are a human resource consulting firm that specializes in working with the public sector. Probably 85% of our book of business are municipalities, and the majority of them in and around Denver, Boulder, Northern Colorado market. So we are intimately familiar with the labor market in your area, with the types of positions that municipalities have to hire, and some of the unique challenges that come along with those positions. We were a team of 5. We actually are now a team of 6. We've grown a little bit, though I have not gotten this slide updated yet. But it is primarily myself that has been the point of contact and done the majority of the work on this project each year, and that was the case this year as well. So from a high level perspective, probably not a surprise to anybody, you know, the primary intent of doing a project like this and doing it on an annual basis is ensuring that the town can continue to recruit and retain the talent that you need to provide all of the services that you do for your residents. And there are a lot of things that go into recruiting and retention, but a key one is certainly ensuring that your employees are being paid competitively to the external labor market. And it is probably also not a surprise that that has been quite the moving target over the last several years. And so the town's process of looking at it every year, I think, has served you really well. And it where others may lag behind and then catch back up over time, the town has done a very good job of staying aligned with the market, which makes the annual recommendations easier to afford as well. So while the bulk of what we're doing through this analysis is really looking at base pay, right, and comparing base pay to the labor market, we do also make sure that when we're making our recommendations and when we're placing positions on your pay structure, that we also maintain internal equity, right? Meaning positions that have similar span and scope of responsibility and requirements are equitably placed on your pay structure so that you can ensure that you are also staying aligned with Colorado's Equal Pay for Equal Work Act. Lastly, we do always try to make sure that where we can, we allow for and build a pay structure that supports career progression. Because we know that for most of our public sector clients, for many of the people that work for you, it's not just a job, it is a career. And we want to build a pay structure that, where it is possible, allows for a reasonable, sustainable amount of wage growth through the course of their career, right? It is critically important to maintain particularly your longer service people, because that's your highest cost of turnover if you lose them. So our scope within that intent is to ensure that we're gathering current, valid compensation data from valid published survey sources that reflect the labor market that you are competing in. We created a defined market when we worked with the town a few years ago for the first time. It's still relevant. We will share what that is again as a reminder in a few minutes. We've not made any changes this year. So we use that information to provide recommendations for revisions to the town's pay structures to make sure the structures themselves are staying tied to the labor market, and also for where positions should be placed on that structure, because we know that certain positions will grow faster in the marketplace than others. So with that, we also then share our recommendations for the pay structure increases and for employee pay increases, merit-based pay increases that keep people moving through their pay range, right? Both of those are important elements, that the pay ranges themselves stay current to market, but that employees' pay continues to move through those ranges so that as you bring in newer people with less experience, their pay does not become compressed up against your longer service employees. So let me advance. So an overview of the deliverables, right? Each year when we come in, we want to make sure that we thoroughly look at current state, right? Meaning understanding what is happening in the town right now, where are wages, have there been changes from an org structure, have any of the jobs significantly changed in duty or new positions to been added? Because even though we have worked with the town several times, we know that you're a dynamic organization. And when we're doing other things throughout the year, things are changing at the town. So we ensure that we stay current on where things are currently. We review the defined market, right? Defined market being simply the list of other public sector organizations in and around your area that we want to ensure we pull data from to create that view of the market, to make sure that that's still representative of your labor market. And again, as I mentioned, we believe that it is. We review all of the existing wage survey data that's been collected, right? Once we go out and pull all of the new benchmark information, and we use that information to recommend updates to your pay structure and potentially updates to where certain jobs might be placed on your structure. Then when that part is complete, we work with your internal finance team to create a financial impact analysis to be able to share what the cost of implementation would be. So again, the town's defined market, this is the other municipal public sector organizations that we want to make sure that we pull data from. And again, we want a large statistically valid group to pull from. We want to look at all of the organizations that are competing in a similar labor market. So in other words, we don't simply compare you to a handful of other towns or cities that are exactly your size or provide the same services. We really want a broad view of what is required in your labor market, right? We want to make sure that data is statistically valid and that we have a large enough source that any anomalies that might exist in other areas don't come in and distort your pay structure. So we'll share what that looks like. Again, this is the defined market that was created several years ago. We believe it continues to be relevant. You can see that it includes majority of the communities in the Denver, Boulder, and Northern Colorado area. The one change that we had for this year is one of our primary survey sources, Employers Council, made a pretty significant change about a year ago to the way they provide survey data. They chose a new survey partner, a company called Pay Factors, and when they provide data, they do not individually identify the responses from each organization, meaning we can pull data from a region, but we cannot say specifically which entities have provided that data. And the majority of the counties that we were pulling data from before have not yet provided their data into Employers Council to go into the Pay Factors system. We believe that they are in the process of doing that, and we are hopeful that by next year we will have that additional data to pull back in. But we do have data through Colorado Municipal League for all of the other public sector organizations that are listed here. So a little bit of the kind of process overview of how we do it, right? When we are pulling data from those surveys, what we're pulling are actual wages being paid to other employees in those organizations doing similar work. So we're not just pulling other people's pay ranges and comparing them to yours and saying, oh, okay, the town is close enough, right? We want to make sure that we anchor our recommendations in actual pay, what people are actually earning. We also know that the town, just like all of our public sector clients, is going to have some uniqueness in the way the roles are organized, right? What the expectations are. how you might combine roles or skill sets, or what your experience or certification requirements are. So we make sure that we understand the positions intimately enough to adjust the data that we pull to reflect that uniqueness, right? This is a really foundational element of doing this work every year. It's critical that we don't just match job titles, but that we truly match the responsibilities that you're asking from someone. So we use all of that data and we match each of the town's positions to those external data sources to create a market average for each job, right? For each position. We also know, particularly with Colorado Municipal League data, this is data that is gathered and published once a year. So the data for 2024 was gathered in January of this year, published in the early summer, and we're building pay structure recommendations for you that will be implemented at the beginning of 2025. So we know that from the time that data was reported to when you're using it to implement, the labor market is going to continue to have moved. So we simply age that data forward, which simply means increasing it to ensure that we're not building something for you that is already a little bit behind as soon as you implement it, right? We age the data forward. So currently, and this again is just a bit of a reminder, but I'm sure you are aware, the town currently has two separate pay structures. One structure that we call the general government structure, which is what the vast majority of the town's positions sit on. And then there is a separate step-based structure for sworn non-exempt police positions. A very common structure, and this is what we see across almost our entire municipal book of business. So this year, for that general government pay structure, and the pay structure consists of multiple pay grades, where each pay grade has a minimum and a maximum. We're recommending a 2% increase to the pay structure itself, which means each grade, the min and the max, goes up by 2%, right? So that is how we're making sure that the structure itself continues to move forward with the market. We did also recommend a bit of a redesign on the police step plan this year. We increased the structure by a larger percentage. You can see a 6.5% increase to the structure. And we changed the value of each step, right? So understanding that the police step plan, where the general government plan has a min and a max, but pay might fall anywhere between there, a step plan has predetermined steps that move you through the structure. Previously, each step was 5% higher than the one below it. We shifted that slightly to be 5.5% higher, and primarily this was done to ensure that the top of the officer pay rates was really staying current with the top of those officer pay rates through the majority of the other jurisdictions in your market, right? We have done so many of these pay plans. We understand in your area where it's competitive to start out and where it's competitive to top out. So we adjusted that to make sure that you weren't going to be losing your most experienced officers as they reach the top of the step plan. So each of these are, again, changes to the structure itself that will keep the structure moving forward with market. This is just an overview, kind of a look of what that general government pay structure looks like. Again, I mentioned that it's made up of multiple grades. These are the pay grades. Each of these grades represents a range with a minimum and a maximum rate. You can see the grades themselves. The pay grades vary in width, meaning the distance from the entry rate to the top out rate. They start at 35% wide and they get wider as you move up the pay structure, right? Range width. The reason I point this out is that that is relevant because if the town were to have entry-level positions that were placed in a pay grade that was very wide, right? When you make a pay grade wider, you both lower the minimum and you raise the maximum. So if you take entry-level jobs and put them in a very wide pay range, you're going to have minimum rates that potentially have no utility to you, right? They're too low, you wouldn't be able to hire anyone that low. And you might also have max out rates that are a little unrealistic for the type of work you're asking somebody to do. So it's a very common best practice to have slightly narrower ranges at the bottom and wider at the top as you move into those higher level leadership roles. This is the step plan that we were talking about, specifically just for the sworn non-exempt police positions, so a cadet rate and then officer and sergeant. This is the plan that we talked about where we increased step 1 of officer and all the way that blows all the way up through sergeant by about 6.5%, because we know that in your area, that starting rate for officers out of academy from a competitive standpoint needs to be at least around $80,000, right? We're seeing most of them begin between 79 and 82. And the top out rate, we want to see that top out rate get close to 105, around 105,000. So this is why we made those structural changes I talked about. We increased the whole structure, but we also increased the value of each step. You can see across here a little bit to make sure that that top out rate was also competitive, right? This is a step plan that officers move through. When they reach the top step, there's no more steps to be had, but then again, each year as you adjust the entire structure, that still allows for a pay increase for officers that are topped out. It's simply smaller than those that are still working their way up the structure. So this is just a graphic representation of the results of the market analysis. And I believe this is something that we've shared each year. What we're graphing on here are really 3 pieces of information. We are looking at the rates that currently that your employees are earning. We are looking at the 2025 market data, so the average market value for each of the jobs that exist there in the town. And then we're looking at the proposed range midpoints, meaning what do the range midpoints look like after the 2% structure increase that we're recommending? And if you see the orange and the gray lines that are almost on top of each other, you can hardly tell them apart till you get to the top of the structure. This is showing us that with that 2% increase, your range midpoints are going to be very well aligned to the market averages. Employee pay sits a little bit below that on average. You can see there are a couple of data points where it is above. For the most part, it sits below. But again, that's not necessarily concerning because all we're graphing here is the midpoint of the pay range. The range itself is much wider. It goes lower at the minimum and higher at the maximum. So it's reasonable that employee pay, some of them, it makes sense they should be well below midpoint because they're probably new and have very little experience. Others have been there longer, have more experience. You're going to see those tend to be a little bit more above midpoint. So this is just graphing all of that information to show you kind of in a macro level what your wages look like compared to market. So from a pay increase standpoint, right, we talked about pay structure increases, but in addition to moving the pay structure, employees' pay needs to move through the pay ranges. So with the general government pay structure that we talked about moving up 2%, each employee would also need to receive at least a 2% pay increase simply to stay at the same place in the range that they were previously, right? We call that the market increase, right? So the market increase recommendation on general government is 2%. In addition to that, again, to make sure people are moving through the pay range, we're recommending an additional 3% merit increase. So the entire structure shifts by 2, pay shifts by that same 2, and then 3% more to move people through their range, right? That would mean an average total pay increase for those employees on the general government plan of about 5% total. This is for projecting into 2025. It'll be a little bit different on the police step plan. Any of the people that are due for another step will see their normal step increase, but in addition to that, they will see that 6.5% increase where we shifted the entire structure, right? We don't need to identify a merit increase percentage for the step plan because that's really built in. Each step being 5.5% higher is essentially a built-in merit, but we need to make sure that the structure itself keeps moving. So with those recommendations, should the town decide to implement those recommendations, it would have an estimated annual financial impact of about $275,000. This is incremental add-on to your existing compensation numbers. And this estimate is a base pay only estimate. Obviously, there are other things involved when you look at payroll taxes and benefit load, but this is just looking at base pay. So officers and sergeants on the step plan would see that 6.5% market increase. And then if they are due another step on their next anniversary date, they'd see that additional step that would be the 5.5%. The general government employees, the ones on your open range structure, the majority of the town's employees would see that 2% market increase up to a 3% merit increase, which could vary, right, based on performance management and performance appraisals. That would all be reflected on the first paycheck in January. Newer employees who wouldn't be eligible yet would see the increase on their anniversary date. And with that, that's really our overview of the comp study results, and we would be happy to answer any questions that we can from you.
Lori, thank you very much for, first of all, explaining where you came from and how you are today. So thank you very much. I would ask if there's any questions or comments for Lori or any addition from staff. Herman.
I do have a question. Thank you, Lori. It's a good presentation. Having hard, I'm going to address this to the town manager because I don't know who else to address it to. We seem to have the ability to retain or recruit talent. Are we having a hard time with attrition rate? I seem to notice that, and I'll quote last week's, on the HR side, no one resigned this week. So it seems like that's a big plus. Well, are we having a hard time retaining people once we bring them in? Do we know what that's about?
Are you asking, like, so our attrition rate is pretty low. We've been working with Lori now for a couple of years, and I think we've hit the region for what we have to pay. So we aren't losing people for money. There are people, we've lost a couple of officers due to moving out of state, but typically I don't think we've lost anybody who jumped for a much higher salary, maybe a little bit.
Okay. It just seems that we were always hiring somebody, and that's maybe a good thing.
Well, typically you're going to have just natural
normal
attrition. I mean, you have people move or people go for another job, but I'd say our attrition rate is pretty reasonable.
Okay, good. Thank you. One other question for Lori on the step plan for police.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a time frame that step plan happens? I mean, step one, do you do it after 6 months? Step two, after 12 months?
So generally speaking, each step is something that occurs on anniversary dates. So you would move one step up per year, but that is assuming that there are no performance issues, right? And then any required training that might be laid out internally as a part of your policy that's required to get to the next step has also been completed. So it's generally both time and performance that moves a step, but for the most part, it is anticipated that it's an annual step increase, which means officers top out, right, at the top of their range after 6 years, which is considerably faster than an employee on the general government pay structure. But that is the nature of public safety and of law enforcement. And it is why step plans are so popular in that area, because the expectation is that they top out quicker. They tend to have shorter careers.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Thank you, Lori, for being with us tonight. And I hope you have air conditioning in wherever you are.
Absolutely. I am in Tulsa, and I would certainly not be here talking to you if I did not have air conditioning, because it is unbearable right now.
All right. Well, you take care. Thank you very much for your presentation. And I hope we will hopefully talk to you soon, later in the year.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care. All right. Thank you very much for Helen for introducing Lori. Appreciate that. Next, we won't go on to our proclamations. The first one is Suicide Awareness and Prevention Month, September 2024. And Elsa? Alyssa, I'm sorry. Alyssa Selby is a program coordinator for the Suicide Education and Support Services. She's with us tonight with the North Range Behavioral Health. Ms. Selby, would you like to say a few words before we few words before we proclaim September? Thank you. Sure, come on up.
Chin. I know it's not really the most fun topic to talk about, but we really do believe that suicide prevention is everybody's business. You know, something as simple as an act of kindness genuinely can save a life. So I encourage you to check in on your people, your friends, your families, your neighbors, ask how they're really doing. Don't be afraid to be vulnerable. When we open up these conversations, we can normalize mental health and make it okay to ask for help. So again, I just want to say thank you for having me, for caring. Really, it's the communities like yours that we're striving towards. You all make me optimistic towards a brighter future with fewer suicides. So just again, a big thank you.
Thanks for being with us tonight. Okay, I've asked Mayor Pro Tem Cartwright to read the proclamation.
2024. Whereas suicide is a complex issue that can affect anyone, regardless of age, gender, race, orientation, income level, or background. And whereas over 48,000 deaths annually are attributed to suicide, with suicide rates in Colorado ranking 6th nationally, and 66 lives lost to suicide in Weld County during 2023. Whereas being a trusted person to turn to when someone is feeling isolated or hopeless is one of the most important things we can do to prevent suicide. Whereas actively challenging stigma around mental health and building skills that increase the likelihood of someone feeling safe to open up without fear of shame or judgment is the first step. And whereas because of the collaborative prevention and education efforts of North Range Suicide Education and Support Services, Imagine Zero of Weld County, numerous survivors and community partners, hope exists in Mead. And whereas North Range Behavioral Health's Suicide Education and Support Services program supports those who have lost someone to suicide and provides education to Mead residents that help build critical suicide prevention skills. And whereas September is recognized as National Suicide Awareness and Prevention Month, with the goal of promoting awareness surrounding suicide prevention resources and support available to us in our community. And whereas we encourage all residents to learn how to talk about mental health, research suicide prevention resources available nationally and throughout Weld County, check in on the well-being of your family, friends, and neighbors, and share genuine appreciation for the people in your life by any gesture you deem appropriate. Now, therefore, Colleen Whitlow, Mayor of the Town of Mead, Weld County, Colorado, does hereby proclaim September 2024 as Suicide Awareness and Prevention Month in the Mead, Colorado, and calls upon citizens, government agencies, public and private institutions, businesses, and schools to recommit our community to increasing awareness and understanding of behavioral health and the need for appropriate and accessible services for all citizens. Given under her hand and sealed the Town of Mead, Colorado on this 26th day of August, 2024.
Thank you very much. Is there a motion to approve the signing of this proclamation?
I move to approve the signing.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please, Marisol.
Trustee Schranz,
Yes.
trustee Adams,
Yes.
trustee Parr,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Cartwright,
Yes.
trustee Harris,
Yes.
Mayor Whitlow.
Yes. Motion carries. Alyssa, would you like a copy of a signed proclamation tonight? Okay. And would you like to get a picture with the trustees? Okay, thank you. All right. Thank you all very much for letting us do that. Next is our National Preparedness Month for September 24th, 2024, and I've asked Trustee Adams to read the proclamation tonight.
Thank you. Proclamation, National Preparedness Month, September 2024. Whereas National Preparedness Month occurring annually in September since the events of 9/11 creates an ideal opportunity for every resident of Mead, Colorado to join citizens across the United States in preparing their homes, businesses, and communities for any type of emergency, including natural disaster and potential terrorist attacks. And whereas planning now before a disaster is the best way to improve community recovery from disasters. And whereas when individuals take responsibility for preparing their families and their communities, the chance of survival and return to normalcy following a disaster is greatly increased. And whereas the town of Mead, Colorado partners with federal, state, local, private, and volunteer agencies to educate individuals on local hazards and how to prepare for them. Now, therefore, Colleen Whitlow, Mayor of the town of Mead, Weld County, Colorado, do hereby proclaim and call upon all citizens of the town of Mead to observe the month of September 2024 as National Preparedness Month, and call on all government agencies, private organizations, and the people and businesses of Mead, Colorado to develop their own emergency preparedness plan and work together toward creating a stronger, more resilient community. Given under her hand and seal in the town of Mead, Colorado on this day, the 26th of August, 2024.
Thank you, sir. Is there a motion to approve the signing of this proclamation?
I'll move to approve the proclamation.
Second.
Okay, roll call, please, Marisol.
Trustee Parr,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Cartwright,
Yes.
Trustee Harris,
Yes.
Trustee Adams,
Yes.
Trustee Strands,
Yes.
Mayor Whitlow.
Yes. Thank you very much. All right, we'll move on to our first public comment of the evening. The board welcomes public comment at this time for any item on the agenda. We will also take comments for items not on the agenda during the second public comment, item number 11. The board will listen to your comments and take them into consideration. If you desire conversation, please email the board or the town manager or attend the monthly coffee with the mayor. If you wish to speak during this public comment period, please adhere to the town's general guidelines. Please start by stating your full name and address for the record. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to address the Board of Trustees. If you are representing a group, you will have 5 minutes. Is there anyone here in the audience that would like to speak to the Board of Trustees tonight? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to our consent agenda tonight. The consent agenda contains items which are considered routine and are approved with one motion and vote. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I will move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please, Marisol.
Trustee Harris,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Cartwright,
Yes.
Trustee Adams,
Yes.
Trustee Strands,
Yes.
Trustee Parr,
Yes.
Mayor Whitlow.
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Brown, for being here with us tonight. We appreciate all your work and thanks for choosing Mead once again. And thanks for staff for putting the consent agenda together. So appreciate it. Thank you. We'll move on to our new business. And the first, it will be our resolution number 66-R-2024. I will turn the floor over to our town attorney, Marcus Piscaskin.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the Board of Trustees. Agenda item 10A is Resolution 66-R-2024. If this resolution is adopted by the board tonight, there will be a ballot issue regarding increasing the sales and use tax by 1% in the town. Right now, the total sales and use tax rate is 3%. If this is approved by voters, it would be increased to 4%. The purpose of this sales and use tax increase is for public safety purposes. Anticipated public safety expenditures include additional police officers and equipment, additional school resource officers, police public safety facilities, and increased community policing efforts. The full text of the ballot issue is set forth in the resolution. I'm happy to stand for any questions. You'll note that in the proposed ballot issue language, we have set the 2025 revenue estimate at $2 million. Based upon some work that the city's finance team did, we're anticipating revenues anywhere from $1.8 to $1.9 million for next year. The reason that 2 million has been selected is that we want to be a little bit over the estimate just to avoid a scenario where there would be a mandatory refund under Tabor. But again, the purpose of this ballot issue is for police and public safety funding. And like I said earlier, happy to stand for any questions.
Marcus, any questions or comments? Marcus. All right. Is there a motion regarding resolution number 66-R-2024?
I move to adopt resolution number 66-R-2024, a resolution of the town of Mead, Colorado, referring a ballot issued to the registered electors of the town of Mead at the November 5th, 2024 election regarding increasing the local sales and use tax from 3% to 4% to fund public safety, including additional police officers and equipment and increased community policing.
Second.
Roll call, please, Marisol.
Trustee Adams,
Yes.
trustee Strands,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Cartwright,
Yes.
trustee Harris,
Yes.
trustee Parr,
Yes.
Mayor Willow.
Yes, thank you very much. Motion carries. We'll move on to our second new item for this evening. And again, I will turn the floor over to our town attorney, Marcus McCaskill.
Again, thank you, Mayor Whitlow, members of the board. This second resolution, if approved by the board, will refer an advisory ballot question to the voters. Also at the November 5th regular town election. The regular election is being coordinated with Weld County as a coordinated election. If this advisory ballot question regarding permitting a limited number of marijuana businesses within the town passes, then my office will work closely with town staff to bring proposed regulations back before the board, likely in the first quarter of next year in 2025, with the goal of finalizing those regulations by the second quarter of next year. If town voters do not approve this advisory ballot question, then marijuana businesses will continue to be prohibited within the entirety of the boundaries of the town of Mead. The advisory ballot question in its entirety is set forth in the resolution, and I'm happy to stand for any questions.
Questions, comments for Marcus? Well done. Is there a motion regarding resolution number 67-R-2024?
I move to adopt resolution number 67-R-2024, a resolution of the town of Mead, Colorado, referring an advisory ballot question to the registered electors of the town of Mead at the November 5th, 2024 election regarding medical and retail marijuana businesses.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, please, Marisol.
Trustee Parr,
Yes.
trustee Adams,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Cartwright,
Yes.
trustee Harris,
Yes.
trustee Strands,
Yes.
Mayor Willow.
Yes. Thank you. Motion carries for that. Thank you, Marcus. Next is our second public opportunity for the night. This brings us to our second regular public comment period. This comment period is for any item, whether it is on the agenda or not. All other guidelines previously stated apply. Would anyone here in the room like to speak to the Board of Trustees? Okay, seeing none. Next, move on to our elected official reports. Any of the town trustees would like to report on anything? Okay, my turn. Tomorrow is our last meet, greet and eat here at Town Park. Start at, I think, 6 p.m. to 7:30. Invite the community to come out and talk with us and learn about what's happening in the town and around the area. Wednesday is the whole community meeting that I'm going to go to, and then the SIRSA member appreciation lunch which is in Loveland. I'm not sure if any of the trustees signed up for that. And then we have the Dr. Cog Awards downtown in Denver, so that's Wednesday. Later on, before we get together again, Coffee with the Mayor is September 7th. We also have a key ceremony for our Marine Corporal Dinsman at 10 o'clock at his house, the new one in Rangeview area. And then also at the same time, if you can't make it to the key ceremony, the St. Vrain School District is having the parade on Main Street in downtown Longmont. I just wanted to report back on also the Mayor's Leadership Academy. For this last month, we held it in Colorado Springs at 2 different locations. We had a discussion with SIRSA, CML, and of course, previous mayors previous mayors that have been elected. And then we did have a long discussion with the Colorado Springs mayor. Was a fun-filled day. And on the next one, we traveled to Winter Park and Grand Junction, not the same day, 2 different days. Thank goodness. And that whole section is going to be on water, energy, and climate. So I just want to report back to the folks that are following for the Mayor's Leadership Academy. So with that, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Roll call, please, Marisol.
Mayor Pro Tem Cartwright,
Yes.
trustee Harris,
Yes.
trustee Adams,
Yes.
trustee Shantz,
Yes.
trustee Parr,
Yes.
Mayor Willow.
Yes. The August 26, 2024 regular meeting of the Board of Trustees is now adjourned at 6:46. Thank you, everyone who attended here in town at Town Hall and virtually with us. Thank you for the presentations tonight, and I appreciate everybody that was here. Please drive home safely. Good night.